All right, y'all. We need to talk about why some people don't trust their spirit connections and their experiences. And honestly, part of the problem is how mediumship gets portrayed. And I think some of it is also a little bit of conditioning as well. Spirit communication is not some out of body experience, it's subtle. It's very subtle. And because it's subtle, people quite easily dismiss their experiences, to be honest. Spirit guides guide us ever so gently every single day. And they're not separate from us. Spirit's energy is omnipresent, always around us, always there, right? Spirit, like, think about this. Like, you think of someone and then they call, right? You know not to go somewhere. And then later you're so glad you didn't. You know what I mean? You randomly hear a song of a loved one, like a song a loved one in spirit once loved after you were just thinking about them. A thought that drops in to your own awareness that feels slightly different. You know what I mean? From your own mental noise. You might even have these kind of fleeting spirit experiences where you feel like someone very quickly, whispered your name. It's happened to me where I've heard like Christy really fast, lightly feeling like you're being tapped on the shoulder. Or you have an experience where you feel like you saw something or someone out of the corner of your eye, but you're alone. Spirit feels like a thought, a nudge, a quiet knowing. And because it feels so natural and normal and faint, people might assume that it's nothing. We've been trained to believe that if something is real, it will be undeniable, obvious, verifiable. People are waiting for proof. You know what I mean? Like this proof that kind of hits you on the head. But subtle perception does not work like that, my friends. It doesn't. The loudest thing in the room is not always the truest thing. The loudest voice isn't always the wisest. The strongest emotion isn't always the most accurate. The most dramatic experience isn't always the most real, right? Not every connection is fireworks. If it feels quiet and calm, seemingly normal, that doesn't mean it's not real. It's almost like there's been this aesthetic that's been created about mediumship, and that aesthetic has gotten louder than the actual experience itself. The truth of the matter is, spirit communication is usually so normal and so subtle that people usually dismiss it. So let's get to the real reason why people don't trust our spirit connection or communication, their own mediumship skills and abilities. We've been conditioned to distrust internal perception. Colonial systems taught us that truth only exists outside of us, in institutions, in authority, in science, defined by empire, in religion, defined by hierarchy. If you can't measure it, it's not real. If it can't be externally validated, it's imagination. That is conditioning. That's conditioning, my friends. You want to know what's loud? Colonial systems. Institutions, loud. Media, loud. Dogma, loud. White supremacy, loud. Misogyny, loud. The loudest thing in the room is not always true. It's not always the truest thing. Historically, indigenous and earth-based traditions and spiritual systems centered dreams and intuition and symbols and direct knowing, right? Colonization labeled those experiences as primitive and savage and superstitious and dangerous and demonic. So People were punished for honoring internal perception over institutional authority. So now, generations later, what do we have? Generational trauma. People doubting their own inner experiences because they don't come stamped with approval. We've grown up in systems that reward logic over intuition, productivity over presence, proof over embodiment. We've been conditioned to think that subtle equals weak. But the skill and ability of subtle perception, it needs slowness. It needs us to tune in. It needs nervous system regulation. And those are things that are not prioritized in our colonized societies. We can't tune in to subtle perception in a system that trains us to be overstimulated. Another thing that I think has people swirling more in their doubt is this fear of being labeled crazy. Another colonized wound. I'm speaking from experience. Like, this is something that I was definitely like, oh man, they're going to say I'm this crazy lady if I start openly talking about my mediumship abilities. When something doesn't fit into the boxes that we've been given, the first reaction isn't typically curiosity. It's what's wrong with me. We're quick to label what we don't understand. So when someone experiences a clear intuitive drop-in, a visitation dream, an unexplainable but calm knowing, like, you know it's truth, a synchronicity that's like, whoa, undeniable. The first thought typically is not, well, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about. You know what I mean? The reaction is usually, did I just really hear that? Did I just really experience that? Am I making this up? Am I delusional? Is this crazy? Decolonizing spirituality doesn't mean that we reject science and logic. It means we recognize that internal perception is a form of intelligence. Decolonizing spirituality means we understand that not all truth is loud. Decolonizing spirituality means that we question who taught us to distrust ourselves and build that trust back up. We re-indigenize our spirituality. Decolonizing your spirituality is about unlearning who told you your perception isn't valid. It's about unlearning who told us honoring our ancestors was silly or evil. It's about unlearning who taught us to move away from moving with the seasons. Another piece of the pie that I think has people distrusting, and I often hear this, is what if it's just my imagination? So let me say this. Imagination is the language of the inner world. If it's not physical, your brain has to give it form somehow, right? Think about your ideas. When you have an idea, your brain has to give it form. And that's what imagination does. It's how something subtle gets translated into a picture, a thought, a feeling, a song. Something you can recognize. Dreams use imagination. Memory uses imagination. Visualization uses imagination. Even anxiety uses imagination. So why do we suddenly decide that if something arrives through our imagination, it must be fake? When people talk about spirit communication, feeling like a thought, a symbol, a mental image, what's actually happening is the information is moving through the imaginative faculty, because that's the interface that's available. That's the system that's available. Imagination is not the enemy, it's the canvas. And imagination can do two things. It can generate, or it can receive and translate. When we're generating, that requires our effort. That requires us sort of steering the wheels, us with the reins, right? We're constructing something in our imagination. When you're receiving, it feels like it lands. It has a slightly autonomous quality. It surprises you. It carries information that you were not consciously building. So, imagination is not the enemy. The moment we start to doubt our mediumship connection, that shuts the connection right down instantly. The more you interrogate it, it breaks the link. Hyper-analysis pulls us out of perception. Anxiety or worry kind of scrambles the very subtle signals. Trying to make sense of the connection while the connection is in motion kills it. And this is because analysis and perception use completely different modes of the brain. When you analyze, your brain literally shifts. I see this in readings. It happens to all of us. The brain starts to categorize and compare and judge, which is useful, but it pulls energy away from raw sensory perception. You feel me? Presence and interrogation just don't coexist very well. So a healthy spirit connection doesn't destabilize you. It doesn't override your free will. It doesn't scream at you. Honestly, it just gives information. That's it. It's as simple as that. Spirit is just giving us information. Our human ego minds like to overcomplicate things, but it's really simple. Spirit's just trying to give us information. Spirit wants nothing but the best for us. I always say this. They're trying to give us information. I'm not saying that there aren't things to question in spirit connection. If the connection with spirit feels dramatic, chaotic, or tends to inflate the ego, question that. If you have to force it, question that. If it overrides your agency, question that. Healthy connection with spirit doesn't command. It doesn't demand. It doesn't command. Spirit offers and you decide. You feel me? If your connection to spirit feeds fear more than clarity, question that. If it contradicts your integrity, question that. If a message encourages harm or manipulation or bypassing accountability, that is not spirit's wisdom. Not at all. So stop waiting for your connection to spirit to look like a movie. Okay, stop expecting it to be loud. Stop assuming that subtle doesn't mean anything. Stop dismissing that subtle guidance. Subtle is usually where the real stuff lives. If you are waiting for your mediumship experience, your connection to spirit, to look like it would in a movie, you're going to keep missing the connection. Subtle doesn't mean fake. Subtle doesn't mean it's not real. It really just means you have to slow down enough to notice. Okay, so this isn't one of those let me predict your future type things. I'm not here to tell you when you're going to get married or what your next job is. What I do love doing, though, is helping you check in with where you are right now. Because let's keep it real, life moves fast. We can outgrow versions of ourselves pretty quietly. We might ignore nudges. We may feel something shifting, but can't always name it. That's where my oracle card readings come in. It's like sitting down with your future self, with your spirit team, with the version of you that already knows. I tap into your energetic field, your guides and consciousness, and with the help of the cards, we take a look at your pathways, not a fixed future, but your highest potential. Where are you being called forward? What part of your life wants more depth? What needs nurturing? What needs to take up more space? Sometimes it's your creativity asking to be prioritized. Sometimes it's your boundaries. Sometimes it's joy. These readings aren't about fear or fate. They're about alignment. It's about syncing up with who you are actually becoming. These readings are reflective, grounding, and sometimes so wildly affirming in that, okay, wait, you know what? I knew that type of vibe. If you've been feeling a shift or like you're in between versions of yourself, or you just want some dang clarity without any pressure, this is your sign. Come sit with me. Let's tune in. Book an Oracle card life guidance reading with me at thewanderinglioness.com/offerings.